Up next, we've got Jade and Bianca Belair taking on Zoe Stark, Shayna Baszler, and the hometown heroes here, Isla Dawn and Alba Fyre. They air a video of Dawn and Fyre talking about Scotland. Again, just a full-on emphasis about just them being the hometown favorites here. But are they the favorites? I guess that's an interesting question to ask. They are the first to walk out. They have the Scottish flag. Kathy Kelly during the countdown mentioned Jade Cargill losing her bags in transit, but it didn't seem to affect her look tonight because she was in full gear here. Maybe a bigger story in an interview for her someday. There are some unique triple threat rules for this one because this one involves three women in the ring at the same time rather than only two. So three people in the ring at any given time, and you can only tag your tag team partner in. Fyre and Zoe start off and they decide to double team Jade, and they do like a 2-on-1 test of strength with Jade fighting both of them off. Very old school, kind of cartoonish, but I thought it was really well done, and I was able to appreciate it for Jade.
That was my thought too. Sorry to interrupt, but this was very old school powerhouse stuff. This was almost Ultimate Warrior level, especially when you get to the splashes as well. And I think that works for Jade. It works very well in the women's division. Some stuff doesn't work, as we'll get to, I'm sure.
I love the idea of Jade being pushed like the Ultimate Warrior. Just full on intensity, like incredible look and just power. It was a very successful role for that particular type of performer, and I think doing stuff like this is a great way of using Jade and hiding other limitations at the moment. Cargill does her combo fall away slam and Samoan drop to both of the heels here, and she and Belair do their double team spots, ending with the double pose. Just really awesome from those two. The heel teams huddle on the floor and agree to start working together to take out Jade and Belair. So now it's a 4-on-2 for a good chunk of this match. The heel teams at this point start facing each other, and this is when Fyre and Dawn sort of transition into a babyface role as sort of your hometown heroes here. Dawn builds to a hot tag from Alba Fyre. She gets in a number of big spots against Shayna and Zoe, delivering a big flipping dive to the floor. The Tower of Doom from Dawn is delivered to Shayna and Alba Fyre. This also is followed up by a big superplex from Belair to Stark, and then we get a big hot tag to Jade Cargill, and she very unfortunately slips off of a springboard on the top rope and trips, gets right back up and completes the rest of the hot tag, ending with the powerbomb to Fyre. But definitely one of the more notable botches you could attribute to Jade on this run. But, I don't think it'd be held against her. Slips happen, but what was your reaction to the spot?
I thought it was unfortunate. It'd be far better if it hadn't happened, but I wouldn't hold it against her too much. I mean, we saw in the main event, very experienced, good wrestlers can slip, and sometimes with much more dire consequences than we saw here. She got up, she carried on. I was a bit more concerned about the tapping thing that I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah. Just maybe to kind of finish on my thought on the botch. Like, botches will happen, but I think more interesting to study, and I'm sure from an office perspective, is a performer's reaction to it. How they manage to pick themselves back up and continue, or maybe succumb to being thrown off and getting lost. But I thought Jade, carried on, admirably well here, again, happens, but she proceeded. Shayna, as Neil alludes to, at this point locks in the Kirifuda clutch to Jade Cargill, and Jade does a small phantom tap that the camera can clearly see, but it was out of the referee's vision. Now the announcers pick up on it and they emphasize it. There's still question though about whether or not this was a planned spot. Because I don't think it really resulted to anything sensible in the finish.
That's exactly my thought. This didn't really lead to anything in the finish. It was very early in the Kirifuda for a tap. It just felt like a misstep. I can't imagine that this was laid out.
Yeah. So again, spoiler alert. They lose the championships. I could see you wanting to do a phantom tap if you're trying to build to a rematch between Shayna and Zoe against Cargill and Belair, but Cargill and Belair have lost the title. So was this phantom tap? And also Jade is so protected that I just can't see them booking a phantom tap for her in this fashion. So was this intentional? Was it just a bit of a screw up? There was a point a bit later on in the clutch where like she kind of does it again, but it was more like without open palm. And this
Yeah.
is like debated even in jujitsu and MMA. Like, is somebody simply reaching and like, clutching for like a struggle, or was it an actual tap? But something tells me this might have just been like sort of an unintentional thing rather than anything that was supposed to lead to a bigger story.
That was my immediate reaction. In my notes, I think I've written something like "must be an error." It didn't play into anything that came after. It was again very early in the hold for a powerhouse. This powerhouse of the women's division to be tapping out. I don't think so.
And as a result, like that is something I think you can criticize the performer for, kind of leading people on in a sort of I would consider that more of an error than even just the slip itself. Belair breaks up the clutch with a 450 to Shayna Baszler. And speaking of errors, I mean, it was a beautiful flip, but she lands knee first to Shayna's back. So that probably didn't feel good, too good for anybody. And then at this point, I'd say the match to me kind of looked like it was falling apart with everybody just kind of stumbling a little, things happening really fast. Belair and Jade hit their DDT and wheelbarrow combo, but Dawn breaks it up with the cover, and Dawn instead goes to take the cover off of the DDT and wheelbarrow, and Dawn and Fyre get the upset victory here, winning the championships in their hometown. Maybe before I get your thoughts, Neil, so the celebration is wonderful. This hometown crowd explodes. They probably didn't expect this result from, two relatively unknown teams against like your dominant superstars of the division. But Dawn and Fyre get a wonderful moment, and it's at this point where they're celebrating with their family ringside. And Michael Cole does make mention of recent tragedy in Alba Fyre's life. And we do know that she lost her mother 3 weeks ago due to a car accident when she was visiting Alba Fyre in Florida. That kind of made this moment that much more meaningful and significant. I want your thoughts on the match itself as well as the result here. Did you think they were the right moves, and your thoughts on the match overall?
First few minutes of the match I thought were great, and as we alluded to, I think that Jade in that kind of power role looks great. The double fall away slam, even just simple things like the splashes, looks really impactful because she's bigger and she's more muscular and she's imposing and she looks wonderful. But like you said, we've already touched on some of the errors, particularly I think the tap, if it was an error, and I think it was, and the finish, which seemed to be kind of sloppy, seemed to come from nowhere. Now, the result, I think it's probably lovely for the hometown girls to win the titles. And I know, because we do know this, that the titles are meaningful to the performers. We know this because of Naomi and then Sasha Banks walking into the office, putting the titles on the desk and walking out of, was it Raw or SmackDown? I can't remember which, but walking out of television basically over their booking as champions. So the performers care about these things. So it was a nice moment for them, but I feel like just as these titles were being, and I should add, particularly for Alba Fyre, given what she's been through in the last 3 weeks, but given that we were finally having these titles elevated somewhat by Bianca and Jade, they get hot potatoed again to an act that is not hot, that I have to say is kind of, I mean, these are two very good wrestlers, but in my mind, they're hobbled with a silly, kind of spooky gimmick where you have to finish every sentence with a terrible fake laugh and big evil smile and all of that. I don't think these two are over enough to be holding the belts yet. I don't like Jade and Bianca losing them. So it makes for a good moment on a one-off show outside the US, but where you go from here, that's an open question.
Mm-hmm. Well, for some thoughts on the match, I really like the story of the match itself. I thought establishing the dominance of Jade and Belair as an act, that required the heels to team up together in a 4-on-2 was a great way of, again, like making the baby faces feel like really strong baby faces. And then some really nice moments that they gave to Dawn and Fyre in the body of the match itself, just to kind of showcase their hometown appeal. But I think I'll remember this match more so for some of the notable blunders from Jade and Belair here. Again, the slip I don't hold against Jade Cargill at all. It happens, but it was sort of the awkwardness of the Phantom Tap. It was maybe even the 450, which I'm sure that you don't even really fault Belair for. Like that happens too. But it was just sort of a clunky rush towards the finish that I think maybe showed still a little bit more inexperience from Jade. But overall, like, good layout of the match, good crowd engagement as you would expect out of Glasgow. Execution, I just think, could have been tightened up. Talking about the finish, of course we have to ask whether or not this was always the plan, whether or not if it was even always the plan to have Dawn and Fyre to be a part of this match, or if this was supposed to be Shayna and Zoe in a singles match, because like Dawn and Fyre, they really have given very little storyline development to in the build up to this. If they were actually challenging for the championships in their hometown, you would figure they would have started their TV appearances that much further. So it absolutely felt rushed, and this maybe felt like a bigger upset than like in not necessarily a good way, for a team that has almost zero recognition on TV. But tonight, especially when you have two other Scottish wrestlers that were about to lose their title matches, I think this is the one title change that was a good call. And again, especially considering everything in Alba Fyre's personal life, I also think it's a good move because Jade and Belair are an incredible act in the team, but they have no other competition to face right now. And rather than having them just kind of go on and face, I don't know, Shayna and Zoe again, or like Chance and Carter or whoever, having a bit of a hot potatoing of these championships is an effective way of creating a compelling rematch for Jade and Bianca, so that hopefully their next title defense or title match period is that much more interesting. I don't think this is leading to Jade and Bianca breaking up yet. For one thing, I think Jade still really benefiting from being a part of this team. I think Bianca is really benefiting from being a part of this team. And I think there's a great story to be told potentially with their chase. And hopefully the biggest benefactors of all of that are Kaylee Ray and Isla Dawn here.
Yeah. And not to be too negative as well, I should say I kind of enjoyed once I realized what was going on, the idea of this was basically the rules of a singles triple threat match with the tag. I was wondering why are all three in the ring at the one time? That's how dumb I am at the beginning. I didn't quite grasp the rules until it clicked, and then I thought, well, you don't see it too often, so it's something new.
I like it too. Yeah. So do you think Fyre and Dawn carry on as baby faces, or do they just revert back to being witches?
I think they revert back to. I hope someone comes up with better creative for these two, because they're good. They're good in the ring, but I hate their promos. Like you and John said on Rewind to SmackDown last night, they're not given much time to talk, and they don't say much that's really meaningful. Anything that would be a little more real feeling to me would be an upgrade. But that's for the creative team. That's what they get paid for.